We are recording now. I think yes.
At 6:30, calling the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this wet week. Meeting minutes.
I move we approve the minutes.
I
second that.
We have a discussion or edits to the minutes first.
No,
Well,
move you second, you discuss.
Sorry. Okay. Discussion of the minutes.
so page 2, this is on the right. I think it just didn't get, the sentence didn't get finished. Okay, so under land use budget review, the second paragraph. Increase for,
Oh, right.
Yes, our minute.
You know what you said? What'd you say? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's salaries. If you look back, I think that's really the only thing that went up in the whole thing.
It has to be in the minutes. That's the point.
Yeah.
We need a correction.
Are you sure or pretty
No,
sure?
we should look it up. We record all these minutes.
Yeah.
That's all that you
But
heard.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so-
Yeah.
I was
I'll
like,
verify, sorry.
Yeah.
So should we
That's
wait
right.
should we wait on the minutes then until next week?
No, you can
Just
never finish that sentence
amend it.
as stated
Say
in the
salaries.
recording.
Okay.
That's
And
what
then-
All right.
I have one other question, because I don't know if it's my memory or, but on page 4, the Volkswagen trust money that was, near Clay.
Yep.
That's, how much was that?
The exact number, 180,000
That's
something.
what I wanted to know. I'm
It's
good.
not 80.
It's not,
No.
180.
okay, it was 180.
It's
Okay.
80% of a $225,000 job.
Okay.
Just being sure. Okay, I'm good.
It's
Any-
good.
Any other discussion
I'm
or
not-
edits? All right.
I just know the spelling.
Now,
Like
yeah.
on Eves, it's EAB.
Yeah. And somewhere in there.
Where is that at?
That's where. Page 3 in the one to it starts with Miss Plumley.
Yeah.
And it's in the third line in the, right in the middle.
Okay. I got it.
And somewhere the word now is spelled, but.
Yeah, I
Spell
saw,
check.
too. I couldn't
No,
find
okay.
it now.
I know. Everything on the computer, so I didn't mark it.
What page was the incomplete sentence on? I apologize.
Two.
Page
two.
2.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's under land use and budget review,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the second paragraph.
Second section.
It'll. I'm guessing it got highlighted or something and then you clicked enter and
Uh-huh.
gone.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what.
Anything else? So. The motion to accept the minutes, assuming that we will have the edit on the missing statement from Mr. Morris.
I move that the minutes be accepted as amended.
All in favor?
Do you have anybody on the call?
No.
No.
Mr. Chair. In the ZBA for years, we have had the minutes with every line on the page numbered,
Okay.
and that has made our minutes correcting much easier overall. It's a little ugly,
Yeah, that's all right.
but
That's what we do with the select board, so that's
Yeah.
a super easy
Right.
change.
Same.
No problem.
No problem.
I think that's a great idea.
makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It does.
Library budget review.
Library budget. I want you to know that the only reason I found the energy to make it here tonight was because of your budget review.
After we get that.
He was early.
Mm-hmm.
For him.
For him.
This is not entirely true. want us to just start grilling you? Or do you want to?
I mean, yeah, the only increase that we asked for was the special projects bumped up from 1,000 to 2,000, just in case we needed something while we're in our temporary space.
Somebody talk about the increase from 2022 actual library personnel from 97,000 to what we spent 120,000, and then the jump to 129,000 for next year. Why has that gone up?
Well, the 129,000, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but, I'm gonna be presenting a plan tonight for the compensation, implementing the compensation study. And
So from that statement, I take it that this increase is due to the planned compensation increases.
yes,
Okay,
this is the one,
this is not new headcount.
this is the one we fixed. We hadn't fixed the other ones that you have in your packet yet, but we have fixed the library one.
That's great.
There was, the director was quite a bit below, and if you look at the compensation, it's gonna be, so.
Calling that a compensation correction.
You do a great job with your special projects. Super.
What about the line that has the question marks that actually never gets spent? Line 390, meeting and hearing records. It's not much, but it's, since the notes say question mark, I gotta ask.
01390 meeting and hearing records.
I mean,
There have been times when we've had to have someone do the minutes. Usually our secretary takes the minutes, but there have been times, so we'd like to keep that in there in case we need to.
Okay.
Might be nice simply to plan on hiring somebody to do your minutes regularly.
Pardon me.
Might be nice to have a regular minutes
Well, we
taker
have a
at your
great
meetings.
minute taker, and she's still willing.
Zach, keep the free one.
How is it going in your new quarters?
good. We're ready to open.
Yeah.
Tuesday we open.
Good.
Good.
So we've been talking to each of the department heads about metrics they can bring, and I'm wondering if Ed and you have spoken about any sort of things, like we checked out so many books, so many CDs, so many books on tape.
So all,
This periodical is getting used.
right, so all our statistics are online. I didn't bring any with me right now, but they are all posted online
Each month.
each month.
Yeah, I'm looking more for when you come to the budget committee, being able to tell us this is the increase in activity so that you can show the budget committee, this is essentially what we did with the money that you gave us during the year. This is how our activity changed. We were able to increase the number of programs we did from time to time. Something we can also put into the.
Yeah, I didn't bring anything like that with me,
Yeah, I'm sure you did this time, but
but
I'm
next
pointing
time,
out for future.
next time I'm happy to do
The other
that.
reason we would like to use that is to have our slides and our town meeting presentation be able to show why we're spending money on the library for the fire department, et cetera. It helps sell the budget.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
If sell is not too mercenary of a term. We're spending taxpayer money.
Right.
I think the, when you were here before and you told us about the online, subscriptions that you have.
Yeah,
That, I think that data for me is very interesting and I found that really helpful, knowing how that worked. And so that's a good thing for us to have
Okay.
and probably even have an aside because it also promotes it.
Do you keep track of how many people use the internet service from your space? Not who does, not what they look at, but how many people, how many hours? As a way of saying, there are people in town who need our internet service.
we do have a sign up sheet. We track it that way. It gets a little tricky when it comes to privacy as far as how much tracking we can do of internet and stuff, but
Yeah.
we do have a sign-up sheet, so people, when they use the computer, they sign in with their initials and the time in, time out. So yes, we track that way. We don't go in through the router or anything. We don't do anything like that.
But you could use those check-in and check-out sheets to anonymously collect information about how many times people are using it, how many different people.
And that is provided to the state each year. I have to do a big report.
Right.
And that's why we collect a lot of that information.
Well, that's good to know.
That report might be helpful.
We may be able to pull like hours of usage too, because I've seen people sitting in the parking lot using Wi-Fi that wouldn't come in and sign in.
Correct.
They actually show up and they use the internet services from the town office and the library. Ours has a password on it, so they're probably using the library. So
I think that might be an interesting bullet for a slide.
My only question is how much is out of town users using it? Well,
Using,
subscription wise, like Hoopla.
okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. So the trustees and I have rewritten that policy. So now we have in town. And then we have out of town. Anybody that's out of town does not get access to the digital services, only
Okay.
in town
Okay,
residents and people that own land in Enfield
okay.
are allowed to access our digital services now. That was a new policy that we have written and sent through the town lawyer, and it's all in place now.
Thank you.
You said people who own land, does that mean renters can't?
If you have an Enfield address, you're considered a resident.
All right. Just one.
You said residents and people who own land.
If you have an
Yes.
Enfield
If you're paying
address.
taxes, you should too.
Other questions for library?
I'm just gonna say, Kate also keeps the numbers and it's online of all the programs, how many attend the programs, how many come to the library, how many children are come to the story time, which, last
So is
there
that
were
still gonna-
20 or so children every week.
Mhm.
Is that
That's
so?
all Christopher the Mill.
Right.
Useful information.
Yes.
It's all there. She
It's all-
provides it each month to us.
And it's in the trustee notes.
The other obvious question is going to be, how many are you not gonna see because you're over a select?
Right.
As
Yeah.
all the kids at Enfield Village School are not gonna be doing.
That's true.
yeah, this year with us being in our temporary location, numbers are more than likely gonna be down.
Probably by 65-75%.
I hope not, because I'm trying to build in enough accommodations that I am still gonna be able to service the school and stuff. I'm just gonna use the town assets in a very different way, like
Okay.
I'll be reading at Lakeside Park in February, stuff like that. I'll meet them on the rail trail, stuff like that. So we're just gonna use the town assets in a very different way because we don't have the library right now.
So
So
our preschool is at the community building.
right, so we're doing story time at the community building. So I'm hoping that we're not gonna see as much of a dip that way. I think we are gonna see an increase in digital services, so that's why the policy is
Mhm.
important. And I can manage the digital services. I don't necessarily want to manipulate it too much, but I can keep the budget.
I notice you're carefully saying town resources and you're not mentioning going to the elementary school.
Oh, no, I'm gonna read at the elementary school on Wednesdays and
I was just saying if
Thursdays.
there was some drama between,
No, there's no drama.
okay, gotcha.
No.
Has anybody thought about running a shuttle service? Like for the weekly trip for the kids over to the library, instead of walking, they get driven over.
I think the logistics
Here,
financially. for
something
that
just
are-
to,
I was gonna say the financial
Insurance.
logistics would be tough and the space is small.
And,
Not that it couldn't happen, but
and how much time you're out of classroom,
Yeah.
I say meeting
loading,
at
unloading.
Lakeside Park in February.
I don't think
Well,
that'll
Amy's
bother the
class is
kids.
there anyway, so it's
Yeah.
fine.
But we do have the community building and other locations, the school and.
Yeah, yeah.
different accommodations can happen to make sure that we don't lose programming.
Okey-doke. And nothing else.
I assume you're gonna wanna leave?
I am.
Okay, any questions from the audience? Yes.
Just a quick question, lawyers' fees under the professional, costs. Are you anticipating any issue?
Yes, well, not an issue. All the policies that are revised have to go through the lawyer to make sure that they're legal. So we do have a number of policies that we're working on updating right now, so.
So you're not anticipating any, book objections, for example,
I mean,
that need to be looked at by the lawyer?
Oh, you mean,
yes, I mean, potentially, yeah, I could have a book that is challenged and I would seek legal counsel potentially, but that's not what we.
But that's not an area that you're anticipating a problem in the future.
No, that's not what we've used it for in the past.
And then one last quick thing, if you don't mind, the 25,000 anticipated in books and digital media. Roughly, how does that break down between books and digital?
About 15,000 for books and about 10,000 digital in the past, but again, I think that we, being in a temporary space, more people would switch over to digital, and it also trends with the age of people that are living in town, because younger people that move into town use digital more than they use books, unless they have children, and then they come to the library more. So it's a little hard to track that, but that's what the breakdown is right
I
now.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just wanted
That's
rough-
what the-
rough idea.
That's what the breakdown is right now.
That's good.
Which is
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Recreation.
Okay. Good morning. Ed,
You can talk to your partner on Fountain Sports a little bit.
before we get started, if somebody does mount a book banning campaign and we have to fight it in court, where's that? Because that's gonna be thousands of dollars.
Yeah, we'll have to use the general fund and I mean, it all falls into the general fund anyway. The library's just separated
Yeah.
out a little bit more than a normal department, but it's very similar. And
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry?
What I need to present, it's there.
You moved a few things around, if you can
Oh,
just
yeah.
kind of talk about
So-
what your plans are.
Are you talking about like the winter and summer programming?
Yeah, anything that really changed, I can help pull some stuff out, but.
So I did want to break down, it is noted in there. I wanted to break down summer programming and winter programming. Because it has been in the past just called recreation programming, which that doesn't give classifications really detailed. So that's what I kind of wanted to do. So that's why you do see some increases in like summer programming. Also with summer programming, that is also has an increase, because buses are expensive now. And to take them out of season, Butler has raised the prices almost $50 to $100, depending where we're going. There's a caveat to that. Last year we had to cancel half of our field trips because either lakes don't have lifeguards and we couldn't get a lifeguard on staff to save our lives. And then some places we just got rained out, let's be completely honest. The summer was full of wetness, so there wasn't a lot of water activities besides playing in the rain, so it's a lot of those. With park maintenance, I added $1,300 just because I would like to see an emphasis with the possibility of recreation taking over youth sports. I think we have to start maintaining our facilities. I know when I first came here, we threw jock sand down on the shaker ball fields. And if you go look at those, you would not know that that was done extensively. So it's gonna take effort on all parts, DPW, mine. And I have no problem throwing on some cooler clothes and going out in the summertime and doing some work. So that's been added.
When was that done last?
June of 2022. Because it was paid for the previous year, bought, it sat at DPW for about a year and a half. And then it was brought to my attention and I said, why is it sitting? Why aren't we just dumping it on the fields?
So it was put down on the fields in June of 22,
Yeah, because that's when I started.
and then June of 23, well, presumably now.
Well, the problem now is it's not really been taken care of, so a lot of weeds have overgrown it, but a lot of it's also washed away because it wasn't used right away, so no one really tampered the infield.
You mean packed it down?
Yeah, tampered is what they call it in baseball. So you tamper down the infield. All pro teams do it, but you have to tamp it down, so if you don't, it just washes away with any bit of rain. And out at Shaker, it's hard and compacted because it's never been aerated until this year. From what I've been told, and NYSL, the organization that uses it, actually did that with one of their grants they got and some volunteerness.
So are you expecting, how long do you expect that $1,300 for new jock sand to last you?
Great question. This is my first time doing it, so it's all trial by fire.
All right, thanks.
I think in general, we used to punish that years ago every year.
Yeah, I mean, if it's being used a lot, like currently right now, I think it's field A, which is on the side with the shed. The hill is completely gone, so that needs rebuilt completely for youth baseball. I know NYSL has a temporary hill for softball that they use, so we're not too worried about that, but the baseball would definitely issues with.
What does it take to tamper it? And do we have it?
So we have all this stuff. It's just not really been done because one, we haven't had time. Plus our recreation directors in the past have all been part-time, so they really can't, they're not on working normally when our DPW guys are working, so they can't work together. They're all just playing it by ear, but I've been told by Rob and Jim and Jeremy, there's a big steel drum that hooks behind a tractor here, that if you were just to put that on the back of a tractor after the jock sand's been done, drive over it a couple times, then pull through it with the rake that Ed Torville built for the fields. It's just working it up and getting it groomed. But if we do maintenance, honestly, I do think you may have spots where it does wash out. It does collect water where you're gonna have to replace it yearly, but if it's maintained correctly, there's no reason you can't get it at least 3 years.
The weather's the biggest piece there.
Yeah.
Cause if they're playing on the field and it's wet, it loosens everything up and it washes away.
Well,
If it's a dry summer,
yeah,
it'll last a lot longer.
yeah, and if it's wet at all, you're gonna pull the mud up and it's also gonna push
Right,
the
it's
jock
good.
sand down. into the ground.
Exactly.
I think that's all I changed.
Who owns that building down there?
Town,
The old horse stable?
Is that a horse stable?
Yeah, so, history of that, Shaker building down there is it used to be a horse stable that was illegally put on the property in like 1994 that was back farther in. I did all the research to find out. But it was a horse stable. They found out it was illegally placed on town land with horses on the land. And then in like 97, they pulled it up to the concrete slab that they put in there to build a new building. And I think money just came up short, so they framed the horse stable
I
up.
can tell
So
you because I was involved with it,
Yep.
none of that's true. That
Oh.
building was there when the town got the property. We wanted the ball fields where they are now, which meant the building had to be moved. We asked the Lions to help us do that. The Wing Committee of 3, and they poured the slab, they moved the building.
I'm just
Yeah.
going off of what me and Julie found in the
Yeah, that's not correct. So anyway.
files are wrong.
But, yeah, Because
Had it been a
we didn't
Shaker
own,
building?
the town did not own that before. When the barn was there.
I
It
was
was-
going
it
after what
was-
we
it was
found
a
in the
developer
files,
that
so.
owned it. So anyways, I have one question. I noticed, when I was at the other day.
The sign fell down because it rotted through the bottom.
No, that's not it. But I see the bases are still out, but they should probably be pulled up so that they aren't in the weather, right? Cause I know Shaker Park, the bases
So the ones,
fit on a base
yeah, so
and
the
you take
ones,
them in.
yeah,
during
so the
winter.
ones that are out right now are the
Yeah.
old ones.
Yeah,
The new ones are inside.
okay,
I leave some
They're
out
cheap.
because,
it's a true,
well, if you take them in, there's a hole that's about 6 inches deep and it's about 6 by 6. If you go to Hughes Park, kids fill them with sand and then having to find them is tough. So I leave the old ones out because that's our rec field. So I feel like since it is owned by the community, there should be bases
at
for the
one time
community.
at Shaker Park, we had a plug we put in there when we brought the bases in, but I don't know if it's still in the barn.
Yeah, I have no
But
idea.
we won't take time.
So office supplies, was that numbers, so it says here, yeah, you haven't been tracking it before.
Yeah.
And other departments, the number seems low. Unless I'm remembering wrong.
Yeah, what you doing with that?
Yeah.
So I think what actually, I totally forgot in those numbers, we bought a new office chair. Cause, I was using an office chair that was, higher than this table and I was using a desk that was this high. So we found some that were on sale. So I think that number's been skewed. I don't think it's gonna fully be that much. But I think that was just a,
We can look at that.
number error for me when I was doing my budget.
Okay.
Do office supplies typically include furniture?
No,
When they don't have a budget for it.
Right.
Keep following up, yeah.
Okay, and then, somebody will talk about the last line item.
Yes, I'll talk about that a little
Okay.
bit. So we're looking at moving to, taking over, but being in charge of taking youth sports and organizing and working with that. NYSL has been talking to me for about a year. We've been looking through their numbers. There will be a revenue offset for that somehow. I've talked to Canaan. I've been struggling. They want me to talk to their budget committee, but they meet the exact same time we do here. So it makes it a little tough, but I'm gonna be sending them something. I went to Grafton and I've sent information. I'm gonna send some more to Orange and Dorchester, but really looking at just dividing that up. The $16,000 on the bottom is what we feel, I mean, that's what it's gonna cost to run the sports minus Kevin's time. They've been spending about a little bit over $15,000, so I rounded up a little bit to 16,000. The rest of that would be coming out of his salary line. I didn't bring the exact number, but it's approximately $22,000 of his salary using time would be that. Dividing it down, Enfield uses a little bit more than 50% of youth sports, so participation is 50%, a little over 50% Enfield kids. So, breaking the numbers down, it's about $9,000 of that Enfield would need to pay, about $6,500 that Canaan would need to pay, and then it really drops off. It's about $1,000 at Grafton and a few $100s for the other two smaller towns. So what we're looking at doing is taking that over. We think it'll take about 15 hours a week, 15, 16 hours a week on average of Kevin's time. Of course, during registration and stuff, it may be the majority of his week, and there's other times that it won't be any of the time. And so we're looking at that. We're looking at giving it a try. I have talked to NYSL, who has some money that if we're not bringing in enough from the other towns, that we may need to look to them to offset a little bit. But what we're really trying to do is just offset those costs and see if we can manage that just a little bit better and a little bit easier with some permanent staff instead of volunteer parents trying to run financials at night and organize sports teams and,
Where's their income from?
mostly from the income from registration, but
Fees.
they have gotten a few grants and some of those things to replace equipment.
So you'll have to be providing all the umpires and referees.
Will you be able to get firm commitments from the other communities?
Not till town meeting. So if we don't, what we will be doing is putting in a non-resident fee to help offset some of those costs. And again, I will talk with NYSL after that to see where we think we're gonna be and help to offset that.
Why are we allocating, so NYSL have been funding that themselves, haven't they?
They have,
Yeah,
So if we take on the business and run it, why would we need to put any extra money into it? Why would we need to double the income?
no, the fees only go one place, right? They're not gonna pay NYSL out of town.
no, the fees will start coming to the town.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying, is
yeah.
the fees will come to the town.
Yeah.
So why are we putting 16 grand in the
Because we
budget?
have to have a budget line to be able to
Remember they
expand.
separate.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have a
It's the
revenue
same
line
thing.
that sets it,
Revenue.
but it is it hasn't been in there before, so.
How will, you handle kids that come and the parents say, I can't afford the fee? How will that get handled?
We'll use some of the same scholarship programs that they have. We also have our welfare person if needed to help run some of those forms, but we'll be running a similar scholarship program to what NYSL did. We're trying not to change their programming a lot, especially in the beginning. We'll take it on. We just want to add the administration part behind it to see if we can help streamline some things.
Are you gonna get any of the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Teams that have sponsors, you know, so that a business that can advertise on their shirts, so you'll still be doing that. So you'll have that as an income source.
We will be, and I encouraged NYSL to maintain a board, and I'm asking them to do a little bit of that part of it and to be kind of the parent organization and act like parents instead of running a business to run the sports program. They can run pizza parties and do things to make
Sort
the
of like-
events great and
Like
Yeah.
the Band Boosters program for the high school.
absolutely. And they can help us get sponsors and they can still do some fundraising. They can still maybe get some grants to offset supplies and some of those things.
They can sell the team naming rights,
Mhm.
quote, quote.
Yeah, I mean, we can work together on some of that stuff, but let the parents be parents and not have to go home and work for 3-4 hours running financials at night.
So when I interrupted Jane, I was gonna ask if you had any way of keeping some of that institutional intelligence memory around. If you could get some of those parents to help.
Yeah, we have talked to Jamie and some of them that, you know, we're gonna
Yeah.
need some help that first year or two as we transition.
They can do a board, that would help. They can do some sort of a board thing and that would keep continuity, if those people would be willing to serve.
Yeah, I mean, we have our recreation commission now.
Yeah.
Which will kind of play that role, but if the NYSL board's still there and we'll have some one-on-one. I mean, that's really what it's gonna take is, hey, it's really like 2 to 3 people. So it's, you know, give them a call and how did you do this? What should we do here?
Yeah.
I think that'd be a lot easier than trying to do it at a board meeting.
Yeah.
So we'll be working on that, but that's why those numbers are in there. With it, I mean, if it works out the way we're hoping it does, it'll also help pull down overall salary costs a little bit. It's not a lot of money, but having that pitched in, the time will be given to youth sports, so pulling it down will happen. I have talked to the select board, we'll be coming back to them. The plan moving forward to do this is to start a reserve fund for recreation. That way, if those other towns put money in and we don't spend it all, it'll stay in that recreation pot. If we run it through our budget, it would fall into our general fund, which isn't.
None of the towns currently support youth sports, right? financially?
Not financially, no.
So.
When I went to the select board in Canaan, they were very supportive, but they said I needed to talk to the budget committee. Like I said, they need the exact same time we do, so I've had trouble getting over there to do that.
So if the town supported, the average cost to the parents should go down.
Probably
That's right.
not right now. Cause the numbers are based on what we're pulling in for registrations right now. Cause there's an increased cost because we're adding full-time staff.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So we kept the registration fees the same as what MYSL did when we ran our numbers. And there's this difference,
Got it.
and having the towns pitch in that little bit covered that difference to
Okay.
change it.
Just from a financial standpoint, you may want to put a number in the revenue side then, because it's not in the revenue.
We did today.
Oh,
You don't
did I
have,
see it?
you don't have it.
She updated it again.
Okay.
Third verse.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I was
It's
at.
in the third
I
version.
wanted something. If not,
Nice one.
The one they handed you this evening has it in.
The one we got this afternoon.
okay.
That one is, we have a newer one.
Version 3 was handed you in paper today. We've been working on it. We'll continue working on it tomorrow. It's changing often.
By the minute.
Oh, it's good to know where we're at.
Other questions?
Not right now.
Any questions from the audience?
I can stick around with that.
Does the recreation personnel requested number include the takeover of the MISL referees and other expenses involved with personnel with running youth sports?
The referees have not been paid in the past, or we didn't plan to pay them in the future.
So what is the increase from 85 to 92?
There's compensation adjustment based on the compensation salary, and then we also adjusted some of the pay for lifeguards and some of those things.
So the only expenses in here would be the 16,000, representing the costs, the increased costs for taking over the MYSL.
That's the increased cost, and then there's 22,000-ish of his salary that'll be because of the time spent. It's something we were gonna pay anyway, but it'll be hopefully offset a little bit by other communities pitching.
We can blame it on.
So is it fair to say that the cost of taking over MYSL is 38,000?
I have the spreadsheet I can give you. I didn't bring it. I can pull it up, but I mean, it's
But
not,
that would be recovered from those towns.
yeah, it's not a cost to the town of Enfield of $38,000.
Right, the 38,000 would be recovered by increased revenue from those towns
And
in
on town.
adjusted fees.
Well, are we adding 22,000?
We're not adding money to the salary for the takeover of MYSL.
So no. So 16.
It's not,
Well, plus 22, which is the cost of Kevin's efforts to.
Not plus though. We would be paying that anyway. If we decide not to, the salary line will not decrease.
It's just allocating money to a different line.
It's allocating his time and then taking what that cost is and distributing it through the five towns. If we decide not to take over MYSL, he's still gonna get paid a full-time salary.
But have extra
Time.
time in his hands.
About 16 hours a week.
To put down sand.
Or do other things.
Right.
It's always something.
I've got
And
to
also,
find the time. to do
a
it.
foolish question, completely unrelated to budget committee in all likelihood, Kevin. The soccer nets that are still out there laying on the ground rotting, whose responsibility is that?
There are some that are going away. That will be going to the scrap iron pile because NYSL got a very nice grant from the Burn Foundation. And they bought really nice ones that are currently in the shed, not outside.
And then, and the canvas nets themselves also as well, then.
But yeah, everything that we use for sports is inside. DeVitri built a really
So-
nice shelving unit puzzle that he had to put together, inside of the building. So there's a lot of storage in that building now where we've cleaned it out, cleared it out, that everything that is used for NYSL at that field is in that shed. And everything outside is what we leave out for the community to use, but there are some that are probably 15 to 20 years old that just need to go away. And we're in the process right now of checking with everyone. We're still waiting from the school district to get back to tell us if any of those are theirs and if they want it, because otherwise Jim and Jeremy have already organized guys to go grab them and they're gonna go cut them up and throw them away when they don't have anything to do this winter.
So it sounds like, without really bringing the Board of Selectmen up to speed, you've taken over NYSL.
The select board agreed to move forward and do that.
We agreed to move forward and talk about it. We didn't. Correct me if I'm incorrect, John, please. I believe we were introduced to the possibility, but not clarified that it was underway.
I don't know, I'd have to look at my notes on that, in all honesty. I know we had a discussion about it, and, you know, I know that I made my usual plea to make sure that if we get involved with other towns, that there's a mechanism for making sure we get the money from those towns. That's about always been my concern.
Agreed.
If I can add my 2 cents, I don't feel like we've taken anything over on NYSL. I just feel like we have staff now that's employed by the town that has the time to work with NYSL, be a better liaison for them. Because in the past, like I've stated, the rec director worked when they were at work, like it just never lined up with people working at the same time. Where now, if Jamie, who's the president of NYSL, has an afternoon off, he'll give me a call and be like, hey, can you come down here? Or when Dimitri had a few days off and was adding things to the shed so they could store their stuff, which they've always done in the shed, and not in the water because that building leaks really bad. He could call me or his wife could get a hold of me and I had time to go work with them. So I would say it's more, we have an official that's been able to work with them.
So which is NYSL gonna stay intact and we're just going to be the liaisons? Or are we taking control? Which is it?
We're budgeting to look to take on the administration role.
So it's not gonna be a liaison, they're going away.
Well, no, I've been a liaison lately for them. It's not
I'm
that,
talking about 2024.
Yeah, we're looking at taking on the administration and having them stay intact to provide some of the other services.
Okay, and so we think it's a net neutral type of thing? We don't think that we're gonna be stuck with paying for other towns' recreational youth programs?
No, it should be pretty close to that. We're gonna see how it runs out the first year. There may be a little
Sure.
bit there, but
Sure.
you know, the plan is to move it in a way where it's neutral.
Makes sense.
And not to paraphrase, but I believe the plan is to ask the towns first if they want to contribute.
I'm sorry?
I believe the plan is to ask the towns first if they want to contribute. And if they don't, we're gonna have 2 separate fees.
Right.
I mean, that's gonna be the harder part if we end up with 2 separate fees and we're gonna have to really look at that. But I think we have to dive in for a year to see how it's gonna work. 'Cause, you know, their town meeting's the same time as our town meeting and nothing's guaranteed till that's over with. And
Why do it at all? Why don't we just let it, if it's working now, what's the,
It's defined working, it's not working.
It's not working.
No.
Not working.
It's not working well.
yeah, I think it's really important to have a
So-
robust youth sports
Right.
program in town. It's
Yeah,
good for the
I
town.
agree.
It's good for the kids. It's good for a lot of things.
So we
And when it
face-
ebbs and flows as much as it has, it's not very.
So it's a mess currently.
Well, I
goes
don't
back
wanna
and
say it's
forth.
not working, right? Say it is limping along on the shoulders of 2 or 3 people
Right.
doing all the work
Every year.
every year, organizing sport
Mhm.
for 3 towns is done by 2 or 3
Which is
people.
pretty typical with most towns, right? I mean,
Right.
you've seen this 100 times where there's, 5
Well-
parents doing all the work.
Well, parents age out when their kids age out of the
Right.
program.
Yeah.
And
If you
so,
look at the history of it too,
Right.
oh, it's doing really well, oh, it's doing
Right.
very bad, oh, it's doing very well, oh, it's
And certainly the
trying to add some consistency.
selectmen have made the point that it is important to have that robust program.
Yes, it is.
So what are you gonna do? I guess this would be for you, Kevin. It's been volunteer umpires and reps and so on. How are you going to make that happen, continue happening, or are you gonna be back here next year going, we need to pay? Because I see
That
this,
could happen.
it might,
Yeah.
and I know when I was involved, my kids were little, we'd walk up to a parent and say, "You're a ref tonight." But who's gonna do that?
Well, there's gonna be
You
a
know,
little bit more of that,
Yeah.
not only refs, but you know,
Yeah,
they've had
everything.
trouble getting coaches
Yeah,
and
or lining the field.
we'll be pretty strict like we are on other programming that we'll have this many kids play per this many coaches. And if we don't have coaches, we only have this many kids play. That's the way it happens. And usually when that starts to happen, the parents will step up. It's easy to say, no, I don't want to do it until, oh, my
My
kid
kid
can't
can't
play.
play.
So I'll step up and do it. And then umpires, refs are a little bit different, but we're gonna have to have that same discussion with parents if we're not getting anybody, that we're gonna need somebody to step up and be able to umpire a game and.
Plus they're playing other towns. Years ago, kind of, it was just Kane and Enfield basically, and, you know, a few from the smaller towns, but, and so you did it, it was all volunteer.
Yeah.
And there was no budget. It was privately done, you know, cause I did it for quite a few years. And upgraded the equipment and all that, and the town took away the money because I got team sponsors. All of a sudden, they didn't say anything, but they gave us $500 a year, and I was trying to get helmets that didn't fall off a kindergartner because it was an adult helmet type thing, and when they saw I would get team sponsors to do that, they yanked the money away, and so, and you're trying to keep your registration fee so anybody can play, you know. Back then it was $10, but it was a considerable amount of work, and do you have like a rec committee and Kevin that can make all that happen, I guess, is. So to me, like rather than the board of, MY, FL being there, we should be twisting their arms a little bit to be on rec committee. And do it.
We do currently have,
Yeah.
MYSL's president on the rec committee. He's present. To my own horn to ask your question, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I've figured everything else out, that's been thrown at me.
Yeah.
I've improved a lot of things already here. So do I have fears of taking on youth sports? 100%.
Oh, yeah.
But
That'd be stupid.
it's going to be, you got one way to figure it out, you gotta figure it out. So I know that we can be successful. I have a lot of resources. I know it's taboo to say Claremont here, I feel like, because a lot of people look at you when you say it. But Claremont has a great guy who runs their youth sports. His name is Justin. Ed knows him. I know him really well from the Upper Valley Board of Rec Directors. And that is a great resource that I have that I'm not really worried about it, because in that there's also Lead, there's also Hanover. So a lot of places that NYSL competes against, I've already have a relationship with them, so I'm not afraid to reach out to Rick and Leb, or forgot the kid's name in Hanover, but I don't know if he's with them currently, but I have resources that we can reach out to that I'm not too afraid, and we'll figure it out one way or another.
Oh, and our insurance company has put us in.
Are we gonna have? So in the fall, it will be soccer. In the winter, it's basketball. Oh, fall also has field hockey if they field enough team or have enough for a field team. Winter basketball, and then spring is baseball and softball. Correct?
Yeah, and our insurance company has given us the name and will help us with someone, are they at a Concord or somewhere over there that
Oh, yeah.
it's like really, really good with policies and how things go, so. They pretty much said they'll just ship us over all their policies to change slightly, and so that'll save us a lot of time
There
and work
was a
as well.
program years ago that I required the coaches to go to or couldn't coach, and SE, I think it was, but Cindy Heath was the one that, I worked with in Lebanon, and they would come in and do a one-night training that, you know, gave you protection as a volunteer, in terms of insurance, and I highly recommend it. It was pretty simple and,
We have some of those and we have some cost savings with that, because our
Yeah.
insurance already covers it, even though we don't do it. It's
Yeah.
a normal town
Right.
function, so it's already part of our insurance, and MYSL had to buy that as a secondary insurance and all those types of things. And
I
we have
just found it
volunteer
was-
programs and all this stuff.
A lot of adults don't think about, well, everybody went home and there's this kid standing there, but I gotta go home, and they go off and leave a kid. Or, you know, other safety things like where nobody has a hand on a bat unless they're in the batter circle, or, you know, things like that. And just concrete things that, somebody coaching out of the goodness of their heart might not know. They may never even play a sport, you know.
We
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
move on.
this is a great topic. I'm glad we're
Agreed.
discussing it in such detail, but
I
we
agree.
have other
Yeah.
business to attend
Yeah.
to tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
Regional organization. Jeremy, are you talking to regional organization?
It looks that way. I actually didn't,
That's a separate sheet. Yeah.
bring my notes with me, but, it's pretty clear here. We are, it's actually lower this year than it was last year. And, you can tell by the notes on the side why that is. Like Advanced Transit didn't submit theirs, and, Listen did after quite a few years, of not submitting one. And we did, think that, they should, and with Chantel's input, she was very helpful for all of us to be able to make decisions. And then, there are some that were incomplete applications, and she gets in touch with them at least one or two times to let them know she needs more information. But if they don't provide it, we don't consider it, because, you have to treat everybody the same. And they need to get their application in if they want to be considered.
So in line with that, if someone who normally submits a request, it doesn't, do we contact them and say, what's up? Why aren't you making a request this year?
I'm not,
I think she did.
think she, yeah.
You think she did?
I
Yeah.
think she did.
Letters. I think we normally contact people that we have,
Anyone.
reminding them that we have a deadline
Right.
of when they
Yeah.
need to be in by.
Okay.
They get she sends them, everyone the application.
Yeah.
Yes. And then many of them didn't ask for an increase, as you can see. And, there was a couple that, there was a small amount, and we felt that, that was reasonable with, the services that they provide. And I guess that's about it, unless anyone has any questions. Okay.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
Like Tri-County Cap, I know they often like will pay heat for a tenant or something like that. So when the town doesn't contribute, for instance, does that mean they're ineligible or
No.
no? Okay.
No.
Just wanna
No,
make
it's a
sure I know.
nonprofit that has a region that they're supposed to do, because they get federal grants and stuff for that as
Yeah.
well.
Okay. Just
Mhm. Guess we can move on.
Any other questions?
Do you know why, Advanced Transit, any sense of why they didn't submit their request?
I have no idea.
No
Maybe it was,
I may contact them, but it's too late.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's free money.
Wow.
There's three of them like that.
Yeah.
And two others that could have.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because when we met with them with the master plan, they wanted one.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ask for
I
it.
think it could be the person that handles these applications, who knows?
They have a new executive
But,
director.
Because they,
Right.
Part of
That,
it.
I bet, yeah.
Mascoma Community Health is in the midst of a merger.
Right.
So that's two of the three that.
It's kind of sad, huh?
Put in.
various reasons,
In West Central, you can never tell. They're in and out anyways.
right,
They tried to come to town meeting and they've tried to come to town meeting 2 or 3 different times with a warrant article
mhm.
to get the funding.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of going through the right
Right,
channels.
rather than going through the right channels.
What was the deadline? Was it today or?
No,
Oh, no, this was back in
October
October.
15th is what we put as a.
right.
We have a subcommittee. There's three of us that meet with Chantel. And gosh, we met with her either at the end of October, beginning of November. It was
yeah.
way back. She sends these out.
Yeah.
It's in September, early September, but,
We did make that change and we contacted the people that we normally give to a few times to let them know that, you know,
The deadline.
instead of every year, we just kind of picked a date and we finally said, no, this is gonna be this date every year that we need to get it by.
Thank you.
Other questions? Right, next agenda topic, compensation review.
Revenue. Revenue.
So revenue's changing, like we said, we went through it a few times again today, and almost every time we go through it, we find or think of something else that we can put in there. One of the things we added today was federal government support. A lot of times we don't budget anything for that, but we know we have some FEMA money out there. Talked with the police chief and we're right about, it's actually just slightly over, but we budgeted $80,000 to offset through FEMA that we're fairly confident we'll get in the 2024 timeframe. We remembered that we needed to offset the revenue from MYSL today. And we looked at some other things, some good news that we had. Let me look at this real quick.
Where's your MYSL revenue coming in?
What is it?
Where is it on the sheet? Right.
It's, under charges for services, under recreation.
That, please. No,
It's part of a bigger.
Page 2. It's better than this paragraph. Recreation. Very nice.
Oh, there it is.
It's odd.
It's the fourth line down on page 2.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
What was the good news?
Yeah.
Good news is Meals and Rooms went up again, so we were able to add quite a bit to that. We got 422,000 this year.
Great.
I can find it real fast, but we budgeted like 360, something like that, 350, so. But we were able to increase that and bring it forward. I guess bad news was that motor vehicle permits were down about 125,000 less than we expected them to be. I'm gonna guess and contribute that to rising interest rates and some of those things that was meant to slow the economy down, so.
It did.
It did. It worked. So,
My new car is not new.
The other one that jumps out at me is we don't seem to be collecting ambulance.
no, and I
We're
think
about
I do
1/3.
think the revenue in here is wrong. I did some work today. I think it should be closer to 15,000 that we have.
And still
It's still down.
way down.
Our responses have been way down. So
What's that?
lack of volunteers, probably the main reason.
So it's not lack of demand, it's.
No, our calls for service are very close to what they were last year. So Lebanon's just picked up a few more of the calls that we haven't.
Like 80%, right?
Yeah. So that is something we're gonna be working on in the next year. Emergency services.
That's great, Kim. That's your last one.
So you'll see that in the budget as well. We increased the fee to Lebanon and decreased the salaries on the ambulance side. About the same amount of money.
so you don't feel 20,000 is too high for revenues here for the ambulance? When you collected.
It might be, we'll look at that again. I wanna look at, I think what I looked through today was through November and it was a little over 15,000, 16. So depending on the month, the last couple of months, we've gotten about $2,100 in revenue in, so it may be closer to 18,000. But,
You
so we dropped it from, I think, 25 last year to 20 this year, coming down a little bit to see where we're at.
So you have your use of fund balance proposed for 24 of 41,500. H2.
And then
Yep.
what's the balance?
I don't remember all of what that was. I looked at using $10,000 that we're gonna be dumping back in from the backstop to
Okay.
offset the cost of the community building floor.
Yeah, we talked about that.
$20,000. Let me grab I can't remember. Can you even look at 80,000 was for?
No, I remember the community building portion, and I remember the 11.5, which is the FEMA money.
11.5 for FEMA to offset the culverts, as I talked about.
Okay.
At one time, we had $59,000 come in from FEMA that went in.
Okay.
We raised our culvert budget by 11,500. So I decided that we would ask to offset that increase by the 11,500.
So then,
I think we need to look at that over the next few years. We can't just increase, or we can't just offset an increase in prices forever. But I did want to use some of that stormwater mitigation money to help with stormwater work. You know, we are doing a lot of culverts that we've not done in the past, but they're trying to catch up to that 20 a year. They did 26 this year, I think, so. But I think doing that this year would be good. We have another large increase coming because of the building, so if we can offset a little bit
Yeah.
and ease that, it'll be good to do.
what is the total undesignated?
I don't have that number right now.
Favorite subject.
It's, well, yes.
Mm.
But I know that the number is much closer to 0 this year than it has been in prior years.
No,
Oh, that fell in from last year?
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah,
it was
undesignated.
a little over $1,000 or something from last year. But we expect more from this year coming in. You know,
Okay,
the $59,000 of FEMA money should be almost a direct dump in because we didn't budget to spend that money.
Okay.
So we'll have some money dumping in this year, so I'm,
well, what's the total?
he doesn't know.
of what's gonna dump in?
Undesignated.
We don't have that right now. We'll get it for you.
And we can get the percentage as well.
So we talked about slowing the curve. We also don't want to knee jerk it down,
No,
right?
no, and I think we're being very, very conservative on,
Something else.
Jamie, are you asking what is the current balance of the undesignated fund itself?
No.
Or you're asking what the contribution will be?
What the contribution will be this year to the undesignated and how it compares to this 41,500.
so we may not know that for a little bit, because
Right.
we're gonna have to finish December. It'll be mid-January or so
Yep.
before we really have a number, but we should be able to have a projection. for
Yep.
it. The $20,000 will need to go. It'll need to go through town meeting, but it's for the $20,000 for the police bonus program. And that'll come directly out of the,
Undesignated.
it'll come from the undesignated, but from the salary line that'll be dumping in from having less officers. So
Yep, that's
we're
right.
expecting that money to go in. We're expecting the 10,000 to go in and the FEMA money. So all the money we're taking out, we're expecting to be doubled.
Okay.
We're not really reducing the fund balance based on the $1,000 we put in last year, but it's all off projected things coming in from this year.
Okay.
So the year-to-date actual on the total revenues, is that gonna jump a lot because of meals and rooms and things like that?
This has not been entered into the system yet, because we just got it.
Okay,
And the interoperating transfers, that's a year-end
Hmm.
item. And if you add both of those in, it brings the year-to-date actual to $3,528,825.
Okay.
What was the second thing that's not in there? Feature something?
Interoperating transfers, that's the water sewer to.
Why did that go up a lot compared to prior years?
What did what go up?
The inter-fund transfer, like it,
That is based on what is budgeted.
okay,
So when in the general fund, the amount of the budget for those different
got it.
items.
Yep, so like projects and
It's just
doing
in there.
projects. Yep. No, you guys don't have the numbers, but do you have any questions on the revenue?
And as I said, we're continuing to go through those. One of the changes that I want to make, I talked to Elisa today, was getting at least a base number of revenues earlier in
Yeah.
the budgeting cycle, so we can have a lot better idea coming into expenditures of what that tax rate impact looks like. We're pretty good at springing that on you at the last minute here.
I do think it's wise to back off on the motor vehicle permits.
Yeah.
The trend is clear, it's going down, it's not flat or up.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we're wrong some, but I wanna come down a little bit, but you
Yep.
know, there is projections that interest rates will be coming down next year, which may push
It's down
forward.
to 6%, 6 something today.
Jamie?
Yeah.
I think also unless we have firm leads on hires for the ambulance department or new volunteers, we probably shouldn't. We shouldn't go with a higher number for the calls revenue.
Where's the
that we
ambulance
have had
number?
the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Oh,
that one's a little bit harder because it's not just based on calls, it's.
But you're not gonna go
which
up if
ones
you don't
get
have more
paid, Which
people.
ones don't get paid? Well, we might, because a lot of them don't get paid. We're at
Right.
like 33% payment rate. So, I mean, it's hard to say. I'd hate to just drop it too fast and spike the tax rate and go, oh, wait a minute. I mean, every year we conservatively do these numbers, knowing that a few of these are gonna be higher, a few of them might be lower, and we've been doing good so far. So I didn't want to drop it to 15 or something and have a $10,000 swing in that one line.
Didn't we contract with a service to go
We
after
do,
that money?
and they're doing much better than the
old
service,
one,
and they're
yeah.
pretty much in line. I can do the numbers again, but it was somewhere between 33 and 50% last year, which is really good for ambulance collection.
Our old collections company, we used to was 7%. Right, so if we're at 33%, we were at 7, because I was part of that project.
And it's normal. It doesn't sound good, but.
Yeah, I know,
It's normal.
I know,
It's normal.
I know.
Ed, will the revenue picture change with the new property valuation?
No, that's.
Or is that a net?
That's always hard. It's usually a net. I mean, if everybody's value goes up so much, the tax rate will come down so much and everybody will pay the same. What usually happens is some go up, some come down, and the people that goes up are not happy because their tax bill goes up. The other people, their tax bill goes down. But I do expect an overall increase in property values and an overall decrease in tax rate. But what actually comes out on the bill probably won't change much. There's a cost of service that needs to be provided, and the valuation to tax rate, it just fluctuates back and forth. You still need the same amount of money to run the services.
Which is gonna be the first bill that will have that impact?
It would be the
The second
It would be the
evaluation.
second one.
Okay, so next year from now.
November of next year.
Yeah.
Right after my house is done.
Yeah. Right.
I'm gonna pay the full.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Does that mean we will or we will not see that affect this year's tax rate? The one that we're working on getting set right now.
We won't be factoring that in to this, and again, it's the dollars and cents. However much we budget, we're gonna need to take in tax revenue. How the assessment disperses that between the property owners is what's gonna change. It's not the amount of money that needs to come in, that's gonna be the same.
When the state sets the tax rate a couple of months from now, are they gonna calculate it based on the new valuations or the old ones?
For next November, they'll calculate out the new.
Right, so the ones that we're dealing with right now, we're trying to come up with the tax rate for next year. That's gonna be billed in June. Essentially, right? We're budgeting for next year.
Well, it'll be June and November. We get 2 tax bills every year, so
Yeah.
that budget
So
is
June,
both of those.
June will reflect the new valuation, or
No,
it's not till November. So half the year will be.
but again, it won't change your numbers. If we say the tax rate's gonna go up this much, the tax rate, I guess, might not, but your bill's not gonna.
Do they set the tax rate twice a year? Do they change it? Yeah, so they're gonna set it, say
November.
February.
The first one is,
March.
the first bill is based on half of the prior year's tax rate. So
If
it's,
they have
it's half of your prior year's tax bill. Essentially, except for the valuation, your value at April 1 might be different. But if your value is the same, April 1, then your first issue tax bill will be half of the prior year. And then that's more of a prepayment, and
I'm
then
looking
that's why the
confused 'cause
second one is,
Not asking for more information. I'm just processing.
okay,
I think, I understood what you said the first time you said it.
okay.
Just trying to see how that affects my question.
Pretty.
I don't think it does.
It's-
Yeah.
I mean, really, I
It's not
guess
bad. I mean,
that's,
what you explained makes perfect sense to me, but, seems like we're gonna go to town meeting in with a warrant article, and we're gonna say, here's the tax rate. We're gonna-
yeah, I think we may wanna steer, or at least preface that the tax rate may not be this, but the increased need from taxes will be the same percentage that we're presenting. But the tax rate may not be,
We'll,
$8.46. It may
we can tell them,
come down.
yes, we're curious to estimate how much we need to raise from the taxes. And we do that by calculating this revenue number and subtracting that from what we are budgeting to spend. And then we say what's left is what we need to get from taxes. And then the state uses that number plus the valuation to set the tax rate. Yeah, so what I was wondering is if we're gonna tell people what the tax rate is, which is what they always pay attention to, which valuation is the state gonna be using when they calculate that number?
Not the one that we have to start the year with,
And not the one we're gonna end the
Not
year.
the one that we
right?
talk about.
Right.
But why not? I mean, it seems like,
Because we can't.
Because you don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is.
yeah, we don't know what that valuation is gonna be when it's done, but we know what this year's valuation
And
is.
people generally
We
don't
We make our
understand.
tax rate off that, but it's going to change before the next one comes out.
People generally don't understand that this body and the select board don't set the tax rate. You know,
Yeah,
No, I think the
that's just.
presentation needs to be crafted around that. I tell my mom all the time, she lives in the St. Louis area and they have personal property tax and sales tax and all these things. We have property tax, and if you talk taxes, she's like, well, why are you guys so high and this? And what I tell them is anywhere you go in the country, a fire engine's $750,000. They've got to collect it from somewhere. We collect it from property taxes, other states collect it from 3 or 4 different sources, but it's the same amount of money coming from different places.
I must not be making my question clear because it boggles, I can't understand how.
Your first bill is an estimate.
No, that's not.
Okay.
That's not it. We're gonna put a number into the warrant article,
That will not be right.
percentage, right?
No,
This is the tax.
No, 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 no. It's a, it's
we
a, it's
put
a
a
value.
budget number.
We say we need to raise this amount from taxes.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes. Always.
And then the rate will change, but we'll still be collecting the same amount.
What they see on their bill, on their tax bill,
It,
is some tax rate.
Yeah, I mean, this year, it's, the municipal portion is $8.46 on your valuation of your house.
Yeah.
Per thousand.
There was a new tax rate before a town meeting, that's one.
864.
Right.
I'm just,
I'm gonna leave
it's
this.
864, not 846, but,
I'm willing to drop it if everybody's willing to move on.
Yes.
so if it, I mean, I don't want to use hypothetical numbers, because I'm wrong, but if your valuation goes up, everybody's valuation goes up $100,000, that tax rate is gonna go down.
The
But the
dollar,
amount collected is gonna be the same.
Question on the budget summary table? The without WH,
Whitney Hall.
okay, but now there's also this other building. So is that without Whitney Hall, or is it without Whitney Hall and the public
No,
safety
I
building?
had her put the public safety building back in because we really preached last year that last year's increase was partially due to the public safety.
Safety building,
This year's increase is due, majority of it's Whitney Hall.
how
I
much is,
can tell you, we misbudgeted last year by about $60,000 on the public safety building, so that portion's being added to this year as well.
so let me rephrase then. Of this dollar amount that's here, the 7.5,
This is.
what of that is the two buildings? How much of that is the two buildings?
Well, if you look, I think the easiest way to look at that, let me find my sheet for you. Got them all mixed up. If you look at the top line, there's a 11.06%,
104,
11.04%.
yeah,
That's with. Is that,
that's relative to last year
yeah, with
with both
with
buildings,
everything in,
right? Yes,
not both buildings. Whitney Hall wasn't in last year's at all.
right,
Didn't
right,
even take
agreed,
out the loan.
yes, correct.
If you look at the one right below that, the 8.27, that's general fund with all debt service costs. So it's not just the building, but there's not much more in debt. Besides
Fair.
public safety.
Okay.
So that's your general fund increase is 8.27%.
Okay,
23 over 24 or 24 over 23, that the 8.27 is the increase.
That's the general fund increase from the general fund budget, not counting debt service.
What is it including debt service?
The general fund is 11.04. Right now, we're sitting at a total municipal increase of 18.98, but we are working on that. That's not acceptable, so that will come back to you lower at the next meeting.
So 18 something, last year was 16.7,
It ended up 15.9.
15.9. What was the year before?
Don't remember. That was my first year. I think it was under 10, but I don't remember it. We can look it up, but no, we're gonna have a couple really rough years with the building projects coming in. It's a
Double
hit.
digit increases, multiple years in a row is very tough for people that are on fixed incomes. What do you say to the lady who's on Social Security? 18% after 16?
Yeah.
I've been running a business for 20 years. I've never had an increase of 16 ever. Now, granted, everything's different, right? Government's different, but
Well, it's gonna be hard with those two buildings. We need to try to get the budget down and revenues in a place where we can offset that. There is a possibility, I'm going to be looking at it a way we can do an offset, but it's an offset that'll push it to next year.
So why are you currently saying 18 but 11? I'm confused on the 18 and the 11.
Total, when you add CIP going in and all the other
Okay,
things,
yeah.
the total at the very bottom, we're looking right now at an 18.9.
so you figure a 7% increase year over year, your taxes double in 7 years. Right?
Right.
Rule of thumb. Go beyond that.
No, and I think we knew that when we voted the
But
building.
the old lady on Holly Drive, on Social Security is getting 3 or 4%. You can do it for a couple of years, right?
We can't.
But then she's moving.
And that's on a small amount of money, and she's getting 3 or 4%.
Right, so she's
Not
struggling, she's
average
struggling
salary.
now. I happen to know someone, right?
Yeah.
And it's gonna, and Enfield is aging. And there's more of us are gonna be in that category. it can't continue. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I don't have the answers. Right? That's what you guys are trying to figure out, but holy crap.
No, and we said that when the Warren article,
Right.
that the next 2 to 3 years are going to be big.
Yeah, the second building was a mistake. Monday morning quarterback, right?
Only passed by one.
I know, but
But it passed.
I think that you're going to see an exodus of some of our most endeared members of this community.
I mean, it's hard, but if they're gonna stay in this area, it's not any higher than anywhere else.
Well, that's not accurate.
Yeah, it's
Yes, it is.
Plainfield is less. New London is less.
Might be a very small amount less.
You have to look at valuations and
Yeah,
everything. not tax rate.
it's a multi-pronged thing. I get
Yeah,
it.
Claremont the highest tax rate in the state, and I paid a lot less taxes.
Well, it's because the value of your house was artificially pushed down because of it.
It was lower, and
Absolutely.
every town is that way.
And-
If
and
you
the-
look
I
at
get
tax bills, they're,
But the fact of the matter is that these people that are on fixed incomes are not getting 15, 16, 18% increases year over year. They're getting 2 or 3.
yeah, no, we can't continue
And-
doing that, and I agree 100%.
Didn't you tell us this is like for the next couple of years that we're looking at? Not forever, right?
If we just bit the bullet and ate that, the buildings are on. And then now we're working with the general fund budget and any other project we decide to do, which we've been pretty slim on adding a bunch of different projects. We've taken some stuff out of CIP, which isn't, we were replenishing CIP with tax money, but it's not going straight on the tax rate when we do that.
So
So
we don't expect to have 18% increases
These are
from now
those.
on for the next 20 or 30 years.
that's why I think it's important to look at that number, that what we are proposing that still might change and come down a little is a general fund increase of 8.2%. The rest of that is the buildings and CIP and that stuff that goes on to the tax rate.
So this year it's gonna be rough. Next year, maybe the year
It
after, it's
was
gonna
rough
be
last
rough.
year.
It was rough last year, it'll be rough this year, next year should be quite a
Not
bit
as bad.
less.
Yeah.
The one thing we can look at, and I will propose something at the next meeting. We're gonna have some money from this year that we may be able to move, lower that. With the understanding that by lowering that, we're just shifting it
To
the next year.
Right.
So instead of an 18 this year, you get it down to 10. But next year, you're adding a few extra percent on there, knowing that that's going to happen again.
So you're smoothing out the increase.
Yeah,
a little
it
bit.
just takes a little longer, but you're smoothing it out. It's overall, we're gonna take on those payments for
Right.
those two buildings. That's-
Overall, it makes no difference.
No,
Yeah,
You're gonna pay for it either way.
pain is pain.
yeah.
Right.
So do you rip the Band-Aid off and do it,
Right.
or do you ease into it over a 3-4 year program?
Right.
You'd have to make a real commitment to publicly that this is what's gonna happen.
I've been trying to do it last time, but one point,
Well, we said it last year, it's going to not be good next year. So
So-
we said that at town meeting, it's gonna be
Right.
2 years in a row. We spread those payments out into 2 different loans for that reason as well. That's,
Because even if it ends up being an 8% the third year, it's 8% on top of the 30% of the prior years,
Yes,
the prior 2 years.
Right.
It's not you're going back down to where you were 2 years ago. You're only adding less to a higher number,
Hey, you're talking about 45% increase in 3 years.
probably.
yes, and that is not particularly survivable.
No, it's
Right.
so one,
not for a lot of people.
to clarify one
For
point,
most
Matt,
of
that is not a 45% increase in your whole tax bill,
no.
That's
right?
no.
That's a 45% increase in the town portion. Now, I
Yeah,
agree,
right,
it's a big number,
Right.
right?
Well,
But I
we
wanna,
can say that,
wanna-
I don't know the
I wanna be
exact
clear for
number.
people who are gonna watch this, your
Yeah.
tax bill will not go
I
up
can get you the
45% in
exact
3
number,
years.
but our increase was 15.9, the overall increase was just a little over 5.
What percentage of people have paid their taxes on this bill?
It's well into. the
Same as
90s
usual?
Right now, yeah.
High.
The
It's
school
usually in the
district-
high 90s.
The school
Yeah.
district's coming in at 3.1 this year.
And what fraction of the total bill are they?
Does that include,
They're
does that include the salaries? Cause that was
Yes.
the
3.1 is the total.
total, okay.
What kind of loss?
I was gonna say, that's what they did last year, 0,
You know,
plus the salary was a different warrant
Right,
article.
But it's a big number too.
But at the same time, they've got staffing, class sizes have gone up.
But they also haven't had to build two major facilities for their school district in
Right,
this
and-
period of time.
and
And
what
that's
they-
why they're only
What's
looking
the
at a
buildings?
3.2% increase.
Right, and
I
when,
would also say, I mean, this wasn't all planned, but having a very low school tax rate increase last year and this year is helping.
right,
Although you wouldn't know it.
Well, they're locked
Well, it
in.
was 5%, 5.8 or something
Yeah.
total.
Yeah,
You
Which
pretty
is
much
much better
know what
than
they're
the
going to be
16.
the next 3 years.
Right.
Because they have a 3-year contract on salaries.
Yeah.
So you pretty much know, and this is year 2 of 3, so you know what it's gonna be next year. It's gonna be around 3%.
and then if people remember from my presentation, several years ago, the town tax bill did go up, right? When the school building was built.
Right.
And so,
And that was a rough couple of years because the school district portion of the bill was increasing
Huge.
big time.
Canaan suffered pretty horribly for that. So again,
Well, yeah, the
we're
only
looking at some big increases for the next couple of years, but we're not talking about
No,
huge increases from now on, which will force all of the lower income and fixed income people out of the community. It will not do that. It may make it a little tighter on them.
Right, and we should be careful that while we don't control the fact that we proposed to do the buildings and that people voted to do the buildings, I want to make sure that we don't make the same mistake from a decade ago and in an effort to lower taxes, start eroding the undesignated fund balance.
We don't want to do that.
No,
We don't want to do that.
Or falling behind on something else. That's part of the reason that
So-
buildings had to go through.
Right.
right.
So yes, it hurts, but we
Right.
do need to maintain services, which is what the town generally does.
And the school building made a lot at that time, but their budget's also $30 million.
Yeah.
So it didn't show as much because it's a $30 million budget.
Well,
You're
I-
talking about 13 million on a $6 million budget as opposed to theirs was a $20 million building on a $30 million budget.
Well, I do think we should have a slide that shows what our increase was and what the tax rate increase was.
I agree.
Mhm.
That would be crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If we
good
were
idea.
presenting a 16 and it went up 5.9.
Right.
We're presenting a 16, we can assume somewhere in the same.
was that the average increase, 5.9?
It was somewhere in that area. I can get you the exact number, but the total tax rate
Right.
increase was in the
Yeah.
5 to 6 range.
I don't think that we can say somebody that this is too big an increase for is gonna leave town. They have no place to go, because where are they gonna live? And what the home they own now, they didn't pay the same dollars they're gonna have to pay
Right.
for.
If you live on the lake
They're really in.
and you get $2 million for your house, you know what? You can move
Yes.
10 miles from here. You may not be on a lake 3 months out of the year.
No, but we're talking somebody that's a lower income.
Well,
Yeah.
But
A lot of those people are lower
there
income
are
people
people
because
in
they've
the
been
lake
there
that
40
fixed
years.
income, and they're the ones that will be hurt the most,
Right.
because they're gonna lose their property to buy less expensive. And there will be people that happens to.
But I don't think, people aren't just moving because,
No, but something has to give, that's my
Right.
point.
I
Something's gonna have to
agree.
give, right?
Yeah.
So there are gonna be people that are not gonna be able to afford it, and they're gonna have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, and
Well,
we
we
need to
can't-
be as cognizant of that as possible, but we have to
You know,
maintain service.
A reasonable increase, I think everybody gets, right? It's just that with these two buildings, it's not a reasonable increase.
It's-
Well,
But
let's
I think we also have to remember,
Well,
and
it's
if I-
reasonable.
like you
until
say,
you add the bill.
we all talk, a certain percent, the hugest percentage of that, largest percentage of that is the two buildings that were passed.
Yeah.
Nothing else in that 8% is more than providing services that the residents of Enfield have said that they want. And so, you know, and you guys are in the hardest position here because the taxpayers voted for the two projects.
Right.
And now when it comes time to pay and everybody wants to go, oh my taxes are gonna go up. Well, it was presented when we voted for them that your taxes are gonna go up. So regardless of, if we came in tomorrow and said, we're cutting all services to the town,
Right.
you know, DPW is not
Right.
coming to work, the PD is not coming to work, the budget's going up 11 point something percent. So
Right.
8%
Right.
of increase in the budget give or take wherever it ends at. That's where you gotta start going, is that reasonable with inflation and with the cost increase of stuff? Is 8% reasonable to provide the same services, level of services to the residents of Enfield? And if not, the answer isn't, because we can't get rid of the 11%. We gotta stop beating that drum, right?
That's the only thing you can do is
that's
slow
what-
down the building.
You can't.
And that would
The
cost
money,
you.
it's gonna cost us money.
We already took
So,
out the loan.
The only other thing you can start doing is, okay, what services do you not want in there? Because that's the only way to save money.
We've tried
Right?
that.
And people in Enfield don't want that. They want the services.
Want the
Well, I
services.
think
So you got-
it's
Exactly.
a good job as was described in town meeting in terms of what this really means. And I thought everybody did a really good job. It really wasn't understood by the public. They really didn't understand what an impact these two buildings was gonna have.
Well, I think
Even though you guys did the presentation, which I thought was great. I don't think people got it.
And the other thing is, we keep saying that one of them passed by one vote. Yeah, one vote over a supermajority.
Yeah.
It wasn't 50% plus one.
Right.
It was, and in the case of Whitney Hall, it was probably closer to 75%.
Well, and the budget passed by 3/4,
Right,
right?
Right.
yeah, well, that's what I,
So.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
think people really understood.
Well, they
I think
should
a lot
have
of them understood.
Good.
I think they understood.
there.
Follow
That's what they
it.
understood.
You just haven't voted.
How many people have actually come forward and voiced a particular complaint about this? Or are you simply worried about what people might say to you in the future? Are you anticipating complaints or have you received complaints, and how many people have complained?
Yeah, I haven't gotten a lot, but we do get some at tax bill time when they have to come pay it. They're-
Sure.
Man,
Oh my God, it's so big.
I complain when I really want to.
Absolutely. But if you sit down and have a discussion with it, they grumble and say, yeah, I do understand it, and I do want to continue to pay this, I just hate it.
Yeah.
So
To me, that's not a legit complaint. That's just grumbling. That's okay. I grumble.
So I've had some complaints and they actually
Reasoned
don't,
complaints where you
they-
can talk and you can't talk
Yeah.
them down from it.
I know.
Stop snow plowing.
I'll, give me a second.
Yeah.
So the complaints that I get are actually not about general fund comparison less debt service. They are about the debt. And so they are the big loans, whether it's the buildings, but some people even about the water and the sewer projects. And then to those people, I then try to explain, but you don't actually are not even on the water and the sewer, you don't even pay for it. And so some people don't understand, for example, that the water and sewer projects, right? Unless you're using the water and sewer service, you don't actually pay for that. They don't understand that. They don't understand that, yes, it's a line item, and yes, the town is taking out the loan, but the users are footing the bill. Right? And then some people, they know, and then on the building projects, what I hear is we should have fixed what we had and not built a brand new, a public safety building. We could have done that later, right? And I've heard that from you too now.
Yeah.
Right? Staggering them was probably better, but at the end of the day,
We waited too long for the first one.
probably,
Right.
yes, that's completely fair. Waited too long for the first one. At the end of the day, the town has voted to pass both projects.
Right.
And I think, it's out of the purview of the budget committee, right?
We don't make those
We don't need,
decisions.
that's not even our decision. And I believe, the select board is essentially has to now execute. Even if they decided they didn't want to do it, they probably couldn't,
Once we've taken out a mortgage, that's a done deal.
right?
right.
I mean, that's something people ought to understand. We took out a loan.
And so,
We gotta pay.
Cast it in another light, the legislature has said you will build a new building. And you,
And
the
so-
executive branch, has to now go build that new building.
right.
And do it as carefully as we can.
And then if you look at some other big ones, right? So say we wanted to reduce surfaces, right? We
Don't-
could not do the trash pickup.
Don't take my
No, we
trash
can't.
away.
See, right?
I
But then-
ask people all the time and they love the
Right.
trash pick.
And then, so we could plow less, people won't like that either. We could pave less, people won't like that either.
These are good
Right.
examples to,
We could
Essential
staff,
services.
we could staff less and actually, Kate would be the first one to tell me that's out of the purview of this committee too. The select board says this is the staffing.
I was
and-
gonna say, we could talk about staffing less, but those services will. be less.
Yes, services will decline. But that's what I'm trying to make is, so I've actually had a lengthy discussion with somebody on this, right? It's my understanding in town that the select board decides what the staffing level should be.
Right.
Right?
I suppose ultimately,
It's kind of.
I think we do
hold on.
rely upon the supervisors of the different departments.
Yes, but hold
Yeah,
on.
we
I'm
bring
trying,
stuff
Right.
forward. It was
Yeah.
discussed when we had
Yeah.
our positions at
Right.
this committee in Lane.
right, but
And
I think
the
maybe the
select board
library is
talked
a little
about it
more
as well.
independent.
Hold your detailed
than some other
objections.
departments,
Hold
because
your detailed
that's a
objections.
state law.
Let Dimmy make his simple
Yeah.
point.
so my point is, if we follow the spirit of what the intent is, this committee doesn't actually get to decide, hey, let's cut the police department budget by half by cutting officers.
You can't do.
No, we can't do that. The town has said, this is how many police officers we should have. We should determine what a reasonable level of funding is for that service, and we should fund that.
Well, we recommend to the legislature essentially,
And so
this is what we think, and they decide.
that is what I believe from all my talking to people,
Yeah.
how it should work.
That is how it works.
So to your point, it's, there's, yes,
Hands are tied.
the hands are tight. And so you may say, hey, you guys get to decide, and we said, and like, no, we really don't. We
We really don't.
review the budget that is proposed based on the services
Well,
that,
you can have an impact on the line items, right? You can
Yeah.
have an
Yes.
impact on the line items and cut things where you can and increase things where you can, but you're right.
But
Most-
75% of his salaries, we don't have control over
Right.
those, really.
We're
We
really.
have control on the increases, we don't have control on the number of people.
right, and so we should not use the budget tool as a way to control services.
No,
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 we're here to just to review and make
So-
sure that there's nothing outlandish,
With that said,
Have
any,
the discussion.
right?
So I still am not hearing a clear answer. Do you have many individuals who have a reasoned and logical argument against this tax rate? Or are there just a few people who are complaining to you and riling you up?
I suspect you have it for 10 days after you put the tax bill out.
Right, but right now, why are
Right
we
now.
spending so much time?
it
I think you can go by the percentage of people who have already paid their taxes.
is a communication
They're
issue.
able to do it or not.
Right.
We've been at this for 20 minutes.
I know, so it is, in my opinion, it's a clear communication issue. It is communicating how loans work. It is communicating, for example, people are afraid of the whole evaluation, right? Oh my God, like this house next door sold for $500,000. My property tax is gonna go through the roof. No, it won't. And so,
Take
I
a
think-
breath, wait for the valuation to come out.
yeah, but that's not how people work. So it's a communication thing.
It's,
So like,
pretty much people do not understand proportions, so if your proportion of the whole remains the same on the new evaluation,
Nothing changed.
then
changes.
if, your taxes aren't gonna skyrocket because
Right.
you went up. So if everybody doubles,
We know
you're-
that,
yeah,
but that is not.
but not, that is not a general
That's not
knowledge
communication.
base.
Yeah.
And when I went to that, training last year, they did something with that, and it was very simple that would explain it. I should look back, but we could seek it. So they said, your house is worth this, now reevaluation, it's worth this, but, we're collecting the same amount of dollars type of thing. And they worked it out and showed that your taxes wouldn't change. And it was basically one slide.
And it should not be town meeting, because that's a very limited audience.
Yeah.
Tracy?
I think part of the communication issue is also a little bit of re-education, if you will. Think of it as reminding the people that the reason for the new buildings, which seems to be the target of certain people's complaints, is to improve the town itself and to respond to a dire need of these buildings needing replacement, improvement. And we need to re-educate them perhaps this year again as to why we did the buildings. This was based on a multi-year research program of a large committee, which we started in April 2019. And we sat on these meetings week after week, month after month, to analyze the buildings, what they needed, and came up with the recommendations. And they were good recommendations. We may just need to remind folks what the purpose of building the new buildings. It's not out of flair and it's not out of, wouldn't that be nice? It's to improve the town, to attract people to the town. It's unfortunate that our housing inventory hasn't improved quite where we'd like it to be. But if we can be optimistic and hope that in the future, as the buildings are built, we do see a potential improvement in the housing inventory, it will attract people to the town because we have good infrastructure to support them in their efforts and to do what the town services should be.
Did you get that?
And we all know when you kick it down the road, it doesn't ever get cheaper.
I sure don't.
So we're paying the price for that, for not having addressed some of these things years and years ago. You know, alright,
Library would have been paid for. That would have been done when it was supposed should have been.
Next agenda?
Next agenda.
Yes.
So as you guys know, we had the, which compensation, right? We had the compensation study. Looked at that, looked at where people are down. I actually got a spreadsheet that wasn't part of the compensation study that showed every single employee where their position should be based on the 50th percentile. And then I had another breakout column that said their education, their experience, those things. This is where their hourly rate or salary should be. And some of them were up, some of them were down. Most of them, as we said, overall, it was 2-point-something% under. Most of them were in that 1 to 2% range. A few of them were higher. We had a couple people up in the 30% out of whack, underpaid. So those were pretty hard. I did a lot of looking. As you guys know, we put a 5% placeholder in the budget. So looking at that, let me see if I can find mine when I get that up. Looking at that, I did a whole bunch of work, just running different scenarios, trying to find something, really trying to figure out how we can implement this study and stay close to what that 5% placeholder was. So what we're looking at there in the budget. What I came up with ended up, what was going to be a 5% was, actually, this is total amount, not increase. So it was total salaries, benefits, everything was $2,647,357. Based on the plan I'm going to tell you about in just a minute, I came up with a number that was $2,661,188. So it was about a little less than $20,000 over that 5%, which I thought was pretty good. What I planned on doing was taking the compensation plan, anybody under 20% below market, I was going to phase in over 2 years. Most of those people are 1 to 3%. So we adjusted salaries based on COLA, based in July off the Boston metric, like I said, which was 2.8%. And then I took whatever they had, let's call it 2%. This is easy. And I put a 1% on top of it. So 1% plus 2.8. We'll do that again next year. That'll get them caught up in the compensation plan. And then we can move forward with the step and grade program. The people that were over 20%, it was just too much to try to do them in 2 years. So I did a couple different scenarios and it worked out where a 4-year program would work well for them. One of our people was 30-something%. It ended up coming up to about 8% plus COLA. So they're looking at like a 10% raise the next 3 years. If COLA's about the same, it's a pretty hefty raise for that person, but they just have to wait a little bit longer so they get a couple big lump sums. Doing that, I thought we came out with a really good number to propose, which was just a little bit higher than that 5% overall increase. And that increase incorporated COLA and merit. So I think it's a pretty good plan. I think it'll work. It'll get I'm gonna say over 90%. It's only like 4 people that are over that 20% range. A couple of those are on the lower end of the scale, a couple of them are on the higher end of the scale, but, or higher seniority, higher pay grade.
Questions?
Yes, go ahead.
What would the percentage number be if you didn't catch anyone up, if you only did COLA? And what would it be if you caught everybody all the way up this year?
I don't know what how it
Figure
would
those
change
out
the
for us?
percent increase on the overall tax rate to do that. but-
Not worried about the overall tax rate. I'm just talking about the.
It wouldn't be,
5%.
I mean, it wouldn't be a percent rate to everybody. I mean, I can look at what the overall salary plus benefit increase.
That's
would
what I'm
be.
asking. So we were talking about a 5% increase in salary and benefits across the board.
Well, it was a 5% increase in salary, and that affects some things like work comp and those types of things. I mean, it wouldn't change medical benefits at all, any of those
The
things.
5% includes COLA.
5% includes COLA, so this would be $20,000 over that, so it'd be a little more than a 5% total increase in salary.
Okay, so you're 20,000 over. If you caught everybody up today, how far over that? Instead of 20,000, what would your overage number be?
I'm gonna guess it'd be about 40 to 50.
All right. And if you didn't catch anyone up? It'd be around
Well,
zero
I
or
wouldn't know,
minus
cause
10?
that 5%, I'd have to back the 5% out.
So, right.
That number, it wouldn't be hard to do, but it would be, I can't do it in my head right now.
I'm thinking those would be useful numbers for us to look at. This is the worst case. This is the best case, so it depends on what you mean by worst and best. I'm best for me, I'm thinking catch everybody up today. Worst is don't catch anybody up.
Right.
So and you're shooting for a middle. And I want
Last
to know what
year
the,
was
what the range is.
8% across the board.
And what was the year before?
6.
It was 5%.
6.
So people that, the positions that,
So
because there were a few that were making more than that, at that 50%. Do they just get the COLA or less than COLA? I mean,
The
how?
people that were making over, I adjusted everybody by COLA.
Yeah.
And then I went to deal with the compensation side. Because if we don't adjust them at least by COLA, they're not keeping. So we're falling behind more at that point. They may fall back to where they needed to be, but
Well, that's what
I also don't think it's really fair for those people to just sit on the sidelines while everybody else is getting moved around, even though they were making a little more.
No, and none of them were terrible. I don't.
No, they were a couple percent over. So a year or two of COLA and they'll be right in line with everybody else.
I just want to point out, of course, that one of the results of the study was an excellent classification of people, the positions they were in, definition of their positions, categorization, et cetera. And so when you talk about giving someone a raise, you're talking about raising that position.
Right.
So that should that person leave, then that position is funded at the correct point so that it can be replaced by someone who would expect that kind of pay coming from a different employer. So we're not just talking, well, we have to raise this position because he or she is underpaid, or we're really trying to get the positions to where they're supposed to be to meet the demand.
Yeah, and we did have that discussion with department heads and stuff too, that just even if we fund this, doesn't mean that those people automatically get the raise to that funded position. They have to have good evals, they have to be continuing to be good workers. But funding the position properly is.
I would like to see what it would cost us this year to increase. Just
Everybody.
fix everybody right away. Like to see that.
I didn't even run that scenario because I knew the building was gonna be on there and just spiking the tax rate just to do that.
I think that would just be throwing raw meat into the zookeepers.
Yeah, I agree. I'm afraid that it could approach a double-digit number. And it just doesn't seem appropriate to have that kind of thing.
Do you think I'm asking that we do that?
He's just trying to get.
Is that what you heard me ask?
No,
No,
you just want the number.
I want the number because I want to be able to see, oh, it would cost us 20,000 to go here. And we're doing that 20,000 because otherwise it would be 80,000. So I want to see what that worst case is. I want to understand what Ed was thinking. You know, why are you doing a 2-year plan? Why aren't you doing a 3-year plan? Why aren't you doing a 1-year plan? Oh, because doing it all today would cost us $80,000 this year, over the 5%. And if we don't do anything, we only save 10,000 over the 5%.
Right.
I can do that. I didn't
That's the
wanna,
one.
Yeah.
I never
And-
ran a.
And I guess my only question is, what's the STEP program cost?
Ooh, well,
Yeah.
and actually, I have a related question. So, as you guys knew from prior discussions, I had never even heard of STEP
Yes.
program, right?
Yeah.
And I understand from first conversation that is common in government, right? But I'm gonna ask you not a government question.
It's in Siemens too.
What problem are we solving? And so the reason I ask that is like, don't fix something that isn't broke,
No. it
right?
is
So
broke.
what
It is
problem
broke.
are we
That's
solving?
why, that's how we got to
Okay,
where we're
from
at.
1, 2.
No, let me, oh.
Let me go first. I'm gonna steal some of his
He's already
thunder,
given
but
us.
So
that's
that
exactly
information.
where we
It's
got,
broke.
how we
Okay.
got to where we were. And we're getting positions that are underpaid because everybody else are on these step programs getting COLA plus merit. We went many years before I was here, just getting COLA, maybe not even getting COLA. And these people are getting COLAs and steps and COLAs and steps. And we fall behind in the market and we lose people. We can't recruit people. And I mean, that was even prior to the employment problems we're having today. So not saying we just have to do it because it's there, but some of the private pay for performance systems and things like that do not work in government because they are not funded appropriately in government. If you're giving a percentage based on how well someone does compared to someone else, and you budget low because you don't want the taxes to go up, and someone gets 0.5% and the excellent performer gets 0.75%, you just demotivated your best employees.
Is the step raise automatic?
Step raise isn't automatic. They do have to meet specific performance standards.
So for the most part, it's automatic. It's
But
rare.
Most places, it's an annual step raise. But what I'm looking at in the step program that they gave us wouldn't necessarily be annual. There'd be some of them. What I'm looking at doing is the first few years would be an annual raise, and then maybe going to a 2-year and a 3-year as you get bigger and farther out on that scale. But
I've told you in the past, I came from a town that just eliminated it because it ran, now, I'm not saying it's the same program. But it was a step tiered program and it was very difficult for them, for the low performers not to give the step because of union issues and things like that. And it got to the point where the town couldn't afford it and the increases, it was the opposite problem of where we are now with where we're too low. We were so high, the town couldn't afford it. I'm just a big fan of managed by objective and pay for performance.
But I will give the exact end feel of what happened here. So being a 20+ year employee of the town, and when I first started, up until 2005, we had a step program, and Enfield was competitive with everybody in the market here. And not above the market, not below the market, we were step in the middle. And then in 2005, the then town manager did away with the step, and we went to just a merit/COLA. And I can tell you for the better part of 15 years, our merit/COLA barely met COLA. So there was never a merit. And what happened, if you go back and you look through the history of Enfield, every 3 to 5 years, then there would be all of a sudden, the common was 1 to 2% COLA each year. And then all of a sudden there'd be a 4% to try to bring us back up to at the bottom of the market again. To the point where if you look at, and I heard the question asked, what was it raised in the last 2 years, right? Last year was 8%, year before was 5%. And we're still as a town, based off a professional study that was done, still an average of anywhere from 2% to 30% below market value, 50% market value, right? Which is where we kind of want to be at. And that's because, in my opinion, you know, from being here prior and to, there was no steps there, which did not keep us competitive with the market. Because the market, in by and large and whole, for government employers, have a step system that everybody in the market is looking at what's your step, and that's what dictates what the market pays
So
that position.
I'm gonna,
I have one more.
so I'm gonna do a small counter argument,
Yeah.
right? Again, I'm trying to good discussion, right? The problem was not there's no step, the problem was there was no policy. Like, for example, undesignated fund, there was no policy and people used it, you know, they used it to lower the taxes and eroded the whole fund. Then there was a policy, and the policy said we should target this range, right? And now this committee is trying to keep it in that range, and lo and behold, we have healthy undesignated fund balance. What I'm hearing is when the step plan was removed, there was no policy put in place. It was essentially decided in this meeting by everybody who has different opinions with no data, right? There was no data. And people, based on how they felt that day, decided what the number was going to be. It was all ad hoc, right? So then a couple of years ago, it's like, hey, we're behind. We had some anecdotal data and we started to prop the number back up, right? In my opinion, this is my opinion as an individual, we need a policy from the select board where we want to be as a town relative to all the others. We have to continue updating our compensation study, right?
Yeah.
And we managed to that because, in my opinion, and again, I don't know all the details of a step plan, but a step plan will lock you in. If you have a superstar, you can't really accelerate him faster. If you have somebody who is not doing a great job, but he likes the job he's doing and he doesn't want to grow, you're going to reward him because he's on this step plan. I would say give yourself the flexibility, but you have to arm yourself with data, which you now have from a compensation study, and we agreed to keep doing it, and a policy, which we don't have. And I think it's the same like the undesignated fund. You have to have a policy, because if we didn't have the undesignated fund policy, I would say this town is at risk of doing the exact same thing that happened 10 years ago. If this body suddenly changes to somebody who thinks the undesignated fund should be lower, they're going to start using it. It's because we don't have a policy.
Just to bring Dimitri's point, 2 years ago, it took 3 votes to come up with that number. Because we started out with a 5, we went to a 4, we went to a 3, we came back to a 5, and I think we ended up at a 5. But we started at 5, brought it down to 3, and then we tried to do a compromise at 4, and that didn't work, so we went to 5.
Yeah, and so it's
Oh, you're talking about.
Based on
percentage.
nothing.
yeah, based on nothing.
Right around this table.
I remember it.
Yeah.
So I think the step plan may not be what you imagine it is. I think it may be fairly well defined to protect against some of those cautions and concerns. And I think the step plan may be, in fact, the policy that you're looking to have. So if the select board adopts the step plan, that is the codification of the compensation increases over time. It's
The other
guidance.
problem you have is if you do it the way you just said, with I'm gonna call it the glass door of government where everybody knows what everybody makes statewide. You have a guy that you don't give raises for a few years because he's not meeting that, then you have a compensation study and they say that guy needs a 10% raise and everybody else gets a 1. Cause you've got to bring him back up to market.
Who says we have to?
You don't have to, but that's gonna be your recommendation after compensation.
That's.
Yeah,
well,
but you don't have to follow it if the guy's not meeting performance requirements.
What you need to do is be a real manager, and if he's not meeting performance standards,
He
he
needs to
doesn't
be out
work.
the door.
Right.
And that doesn't
Right.
happen. But,
Yeah,
you know, the
exactly, but
super-
that never happens.
Well, the
That
superstar,
I-
yeah, all of this compensation is gonna be evolving around job descriptions. And at this level, you're gonna have this kind of a progression, and then if you're a superstar, maybe you get promoted to this level, and you'll have a different compensation plan.
This all ties together. It's just not everybody gets a step, but it's,
Well, and we're such
According
a
to-
small staff that,
Well,
I mean, you move through and unless you're in, we have some unique positions that there's absolutely nowhere to move ever.
Right.
But other ones, you're gonna move up the career ladder in the police department, and that's where you're gonna get your acceleration. That's,
So what, if you have a policy and you have data, what is the step plan solving?
It is the policy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you'll write on a textual
it's the
statement.
policy.
This
If
is
you're
that.
doing your job and you're doing a good job and you're doing this every year, at this time frame, you'll move from here to here. And they know it, it's an expectation.
Regardless of performance.
Yeah,
no,
No, it is the
No.
performance.
It is the
performance
performance.
based.
I,
We don't
Put
make the
someone
big
Doing
degree.
away
yeah.
with
but
the-
95% of them are going to get the step.
right.
And the person that doesn't shouldn't be here.
He shouldn't be, they shouldn't be
Right.
here. I
So everybody gets the step.
They shouldn't be here.
Everybody gets the step.
And I'm not saying,
Step down the step. I've been on
To
step
ensure that.
programs and everybody gets the step.
That's right.
So, I'm not
That's how it
saying,
works.
I'm not saying raises are bad, right? I'm not saying raises are bad.
No,
I'm honestly saying, have a flexible policy. Like the undesignated fund between, what is it? What is our goal? 8 to 17? Right?
You know that graph that
Have a
we
goal.
follow?
What are the goals, for example, as an organization, we should at least meet COLA and we should stay within the 50 percentile of the compensation study, right? If you have that, you have the COLA and the 50% of the compensation study, you're essentially gonna say, the town is saying, we want to keep everybody competitive within the market, right? It gives you the flexibility to do other things.
yeah,
No.
the problem, I'm sorry, but I have a problem with the compensation study here.
Okay,
Okay, because we're the smallest town that's in here. And to say that, I'll bring the police in, because might as well. A police lieutenant in Londonderry and Hudson is the same as a police lieutenant in Enfield, New Hampshire. And should get paid the same.
Right. No, I don't disagree,
Right.
but I think there's, I haven't looked at the specific towns that were in that, but I know I have this
Right.
statewide one. And to compare, one of the people I should, we need to compare to was like Canaan.
I agree.
And we're, in the compensation study is in alignment with what the other PDs are paying. So.
Right.
I
I
agree
mean,
with the
this one
compensation
has
study
us-
because of. the
This one
numbers.
has us in with Hudson, Londonderry. I mean, the
Well,
closest
yes,
one
yes,
to us is
With
Wolfboro.
lots of them.
Census. There's 29 of them,
I know.
and 17 of the 29 are over 10,000 people. And we're at 4,000.
Skews the results.
It
way
does a
he
little, I mean,
explained
they're
it, it did not.
scientifically comparable. And then, I mean, you look at us, our population is, but in the summer, we're much over 4,000. We're 7+.
Right, and our closest one is Wolfboro, who's probably 25,000 in the summer.
Right, but if you take those same numbers, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, Dan, but what I'm saying is, and I can only speak on the police side, because that's where my experience lies. But I took those same numbers, I compared them to New London, to, to Canaan, to all the other towns that are in our demographic, and those numbers match, right? And so,
Yeah.
to me, that validates what the wage study says, that we're, on average for our police officers are 2% below.
I agree with the police officers. It's the further you get up on the chain, where all of a sudden someone's supervising 15 people
Mhm.
as opposed to supervising 2 people.
Well, that would be the definition of the position, less so than the population of the town. I don't believe that a machine operator, a bulldozer operator who works for a small town should be paid significantly less than a machine operator who works for a bigger
I
town.
agree.
It's the same machine, he's doing the same effort.
I
Policeman is the same, a police lieutenant in Enfield is doing the same job as a police lieutenant in a larger town. If there's a definition of responsibility in terms of
Number of people.
taking care of other people or supervising a lower level of people, then that's a different position. But if the positions were all equal, then the population doesn't necessarily have that large an influence over what a person should be paid.
Well, except when you get up to supervisory levels in a town that has 25,000 people in it, and you're a police sergeant,
Mhm.
you're gonna have more responsibility in that town than you are.
And that's when you're redefining the job, so it's
Right.
not apples to apples. If a lieutenant in this town doesn't have the responsibility to supervise more.
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna
Lieutenant
agree
bigger
and
town
disagree,
supervises
cause
more.
I'll tell you, I work twice as hard here as I did in Claremont. as
I'm
a
sure you do.
manager, Cause I had people to do all of that stuff.
Right, yeah.
I went to meetings and I talked to politicians and I did that, and here I'm writing reports and I'm doing
Right.
other things that I
Yeah.
need to do, so. It's apples to apples, should I make the same? No, but I think there's.
But I think where I'm seeing it is in the mid-level. Where it's the same, I mean,
And you have to look at
That's
your
what we have a
competition,
town manager for, is to add some balance to that, right?
Yeah. and you need to look at your competition, cause those people know what the people right next door are making.
oh yeah,
And they're getting recruited, they're getting phone calls at home, and when they leave, it's gonna cost you more than funding that study.
When he explained. Well, that's my question. If, will the STEP program work in these times? When, say someone leaves, it's been here 25 years, they're not gonna, and someone comes in, it's 2 or 3 years experience, maybe less. Are they gonna expect to have the salary that the person had that was here 25 years?
No?
But some other town is probably gonna give it to them to get them.
Yeah, I mean, we need to continue watching that.
So I mean, how can it work?
It gives you some expectation, it gives some structure
Excuse
to the town.
Process.
There's a certain level though, also expected to a certain position, right? Like,
right.
you know, a chief of police, you know, I've got 24 years of experience right now, not as a chief, but in law enforcement experience, and a chief steps in and say he's got 17 or 18 years of experience. That position, the expectation of that position pays a certain amount, so it's, maybe it's not quite like, say, where I'm at when I head out the door to my golden handshake, you know, retirement. But there is, you know, certain levels at the position itself, if you're qualified for it, that's what it pays, same thing.
And you're gonna
That's
come
what I'd
in,
say
at-
the
you're
lieutenant.
gonna come in at step 10,
Right, exactly,
you're not coming in at step 1.
exactly. Yeah.
Right, but see, that's the thing, and, they won't expect it, when, in the school,
Right.
when someone retires at the top,
Right,
they figure they can hire 2 more
right.
in their place.
But
That's what happens.
Yeah.
But, that is not gonna work now, especially in,
if you look at the wage, if you look at the step increases, like for instance, if you look at like the example of the wage study, I think it has a chief at a 22. But then there's a bracket of in that 22, right? A 22 step 1 versus a 22 step 10.
Minimum, maximum.
And so you got the minimum, the middle, and then the maximum, you know what I mean? And so I would say that, you know, you're probably not gonna get somebody that wants to come in and be a chief and have that responsibility and come in at a step 1, right? But, you know, they might be willing to come, you know, wanna come in and be at like that step 4 versus somebody who's been here for 20 years, maybe they're a step 8.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so
mhm.
that's the reality of what the market.
But I'm just saying,
That's
the
using the
competition
system.
between, communities to hire people kind of makes it very difficult to have any policy.
That was my recommendation at the last meeting too, to expand the step from 12 to a bigger number, which shrinks the increase in between them.
Right.
But also allows the department heads the ability to, if you have a really exemplary employee, to give a double step increase. And there's still some structure on how much that is. You're not just making up a number. There's some structure into how the movement works. It also puts the
Right.
right differences between grades, which is really important. That, you know, you don't give either way, but you don't give really good increases to the police officers, and then when they get promoted to detective or lieutenant, they get a 10 cent an hour raise because you compressed everything together.
Right.
That it keeps that structure moving at the same rate together and keeps the differences between positions.
Has the select board discussed this?
Not at this level.
This is well.
I would just make the comment that from personal experience, I came under the board, selectman, when the recession hit. Some of you may remember that. You may remember what happened to many communities in the United States, some of whom declared bankruptcy. some small towns in New Hampshire, I believe, declared bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And so what happens to these increases at that point? That's when all of a sudden a town say, okay, we can't give raises.
Right.
Here in Enfield, we said, maybe we can't give a raise, but we're gonna make a commitment to keeping everyone employed, and we did. But then to get out of that, became very hard, right, to suddenly start giving increases. And I think that's where a lot of the 2% ethos started. So, you know, we are at the mercy of a national economy. And we're also so at the mercy of a local economy. I think right now we're doing well, which is one of the reasons I think we picked a good time to do the building projects that we have. But we've got to be cautious looking to the future. I like the STEP program, but I don't think we want to emblazon that on the wall. It's a tool. It's not the be all and the end all.
Well, and you can definitely do that. I was part of the step system when that hit and it was, everybody's freezing right here.
Everybody's level.
Right.
We'll do what we can do. And then when we moved out of that, we adjusted back into the step program the best way we could and kept moving.
And the offset to that was, we're gonna keep you employed.
See here,
And that's where some of the undesignated fund is.
Yeah.
so as an individual who vote, if there's a step plan in my mind, there has to be a written policy. We can't just say, oh, we're gonna go implement step. There has to be something in writing that puts guardrails on it and puts words to it. Not just, hey, we're gonna go implement step. Here's the budget line item, this percent and go. It's gotta be something in writing, similar to what we had on the undesignated fund.
Agree.
That the select board votes on. Sorry to give you guys away.
I think that,
I mean, I think that's fine. I mean, it's sort of what we have. We have an understanding.
Right, but in writing,
On paper,
on paper,
published on the webpage, signed by the select board.
yes.
Actually, right now, we don't have much of anything. And it's
No.
It's,
move
if
people
you,
around.
you're in the.
And so the only
So
thing-
actually
Get a
add a
good
lot of
raise.
stuff.
We're out of our purview here.
I don't think we need to have actual written specific policies, but we do have to have a philosophy of how we want to deal with the step issue and how we want to deal with the compensation package. That's fair to have a board of selectmen policy as to how we want to deal with compensation package in general. And it's fine to talk about that, but economic conditions change to the point where you do have to be able to react with the change in the economic times, one way or the other, whether it's poor economy or increased demand.
Right,
So you need to have that flexibility.
And that should be in your policy. I'm serious, that should be.
The policy should simply say that the board of selectmen has an input into the policy and to the philosophy of how to deal with the compensation package.
No,
How
they
it-
should-
No, I think it should be,
Employees.
it should be
No.
just like the undesignated fund. And it doesn't mean you have to put everything in numbers for every single step and what it is.
Right.
But it should, like the undesignated fund gives a broad guideline, hey, we're gonna follow this New Hampshire guideline, and the guideline says to do this, and there's like a window that's like this big, literally. And I think we do need to put it in words, right? Because
Succession
otherwise it
planning.
doesn't have teeth in it. And second is, 10 years from now, most of us in this room will not be in this room for various reasons or not.
And the select board, same thing. So continuity and policy and governance through the select board, you plan for your succession
It doesn't have to be
by
more than a
writing
page.
some of that policy.
I'm not even sure a select board can make rules that will chain subsequent select boards.
No,
Right?
they can't.
No,
they can't.
They can't, but they can.
That's why they
They
write.
can.
So the next select board can say, no, we're gonna change the numbers here.
Yes,
Yeah.
they can, but
But
then
they
it's
can
So why
write a
not just
guideline.
trust the select board to sit down with the budget committee and have this discussion?
It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of recognizing that people change their minds rapidly.
Look at the
without
undesignated
rational
funds.
reason.
Yeah.
Just
So
look
have-
at the undesignated
Yeah.
fund.
Having policy written simply provides a guideline. This is what we thought back on this day after a long reasoned discussion and we wrote it
And
down.
it's how you get him.
Today I'm hungry and I want to get out of this meeting, and so damn it, I'll vote for anything. Including a policy change, right?
Right.
If I have that policy, I can say, oh, God, I'm just hungry. Okay, we'll see.
But we could vote on the policy, let's change it.
Absolutely.
Right, you
Right.
can, right.
Right,
Yes.
Yeah,
that's,
you can change the policy.
anytime.
Anytime you want.
Anytime.
I think to me,
that-
Dean's got a very good point.
I like your point, but I also like the, grade and step idea based on.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time trusting this without seeing it in writing, that we all distrust that it will be implemented and a bad employee we will get rid of or withhold that raise or whatever. And that we will promote first few years here, you know, more rapidly and slow it down. And the way I understood you saying it was, in order to get another step, they might have to do an education piece. It's not an automatic thing. There's things that, and I'd kind of like to see what that looks like. Because that's a massive amount of work and I understand it. But I feel like I've sat in enough meetings, having been an educator, and you hear all this, sounds great, but it doesn't get implemented the way it sounded. And so I think that's why what you're saying
That
has
kinda
to
goes to
happen.
the policy,
Yeah.
but I think it would be more, here's the written plan of how we're gonna implement.
Right, and I feel like, okay, so you might be able to say to somebody, yeah, this isn't happening from you. So these things have to change, there won't be any raises until, and if it doesn't happen by such and such a date, you know, by or whatever. And we all know managers that don't do that. And that's why we struggle with it,
This is why
because,
we have policy statements.
because you
employee
feel like they're getting a free ride and somebody works their butt off isn't.
And that's bad for morale.
Yes.
Any other discussions on this topic
quiet.
before we move to the last agenda item?
Almost.
So we're looking at if
We're
what
done.
you're proposing is about $20,000 over that 5%.
Over what's is the, we didn't give them an updated expenditure, when we were working on it some today.
You're gonna figure out the real numbers, and when we have those numbers in front of us, we will understand that this big increase is because you are bringing some people up. And some of them were way below, and you're gonna bring them up over the course of 3 or 4 years. So basically,
Yeah, there's just a couple people that most of them, it's bringing them up
I
in 2
understand that.
years.
I didn't have a breakdown, but the financial overview number does include the numbers,
new
the
salary.
new salary.
yeah, it'll include the new salaries and it'll include,
The one you
The-
have in
the
front
over-
of you.
The overview budget includes it.
it
With-
does,
with
okay,
the
great,
cost
thank you.
increase already has.
$20,000 or $30,000 on $2 million, that's really a small,
It's not
a,
much,
a small percent.
it's a very small price to pay.
I think the budget
Justice.
should get a description of Ed's algorithm.
Right.
So that it can be re-implemented next year or adjusted per the budget committee. But I agree, it needs to be, and it is complicated, but it needs to be written as a philosophy to present to the budget committee as to how he's managing it. So that you have an opportunity to understand what the plan is. It's a complicated, matrix.
I will say, the plan part will not be done.
And then,
this year.
and so that the select board can reinforce.
I'm working on how to implement how far behind we are right now,
Yeah.
and then we'll look at the step plan over the next, my 2-year plan. We're catching people up. We don't even need to implement a step plan right now because we're trying to catch everybody.
So you're not planning to implement step plan in 2024?
No.
Okay.
We're planning on building it.
If you hold your, put the policy together. Rather than me reading this application, I suggest that Brad simply speak for 60 seconds, making his case.
You want me?
Oh, yeah.
For 60
So,
seconds, making.
Just interested in getting back. I've been on some of the committees. I'm on the planning board. I run a company that, so I'm very familiar with, doing budgets and that sort of thing. Want to understand the process. This is my first, introduction to, how the town runs in terms of its finances. That's it, really, in a nutshell.
Thank you.
I will ask a lot of questions, so
Good,
forgive me.
So
Questions are good.
I'll make a motion. that we,
Second that.
All in favor of accepting Brad as a member of the budget committee? All say, all in favor? Aye.
Welcome.
It's too late.
I thank you.
Clear.
Thank you.
We all in favor?
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna sign a mine line item.
So this
Nice
is only
signature.
until the next election, so if you want to, this is only until the next election.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's how I understood it.
You'll wanna run, if you wanna keep doing it, you wanna sign up. you sign.
So,
So it'll be somewhere around the end of January.
Okay, cool.
you have to sign this page,
Yeah.
Useful.
You have to sign that in front of the town clerk.
you have to sign this in front of the town clerk. I'm gonna give it back to Alyssa.
Okay. Oh, you're gonna do that?
Yeah, because
So now. it goes-
You have to swear.
My buddy.
Raise your hand.
Yeah.
all right,
She doesn't even make you raise your hand.
other public comments.
You nod.
Yeah.
Is it a motion to adjourn?
no, I
Don't
want to
move.
know about my fire.
Second.
So wait a minute, I just wanna, I read this article about, turnout gear for fire departments. Did you read that? And that they're full of PFAs and they're now associating cancer with those. And this is, some of this information came right out of Massachusetts. Anyways, it's an article and we budgeted, hoping to budget for more turnout, new gear.
Right.
And I'm thinking, we don't wanna be buying that kind of gear because we have a liability if that's public knowledge. So I thought I could send the article, give it to you the article to go out.
No, they're
Yeah.
well aware of it. That's
Okay.
been going on for years.
Yeah,
and
yeah. But I was,
You know, most of the new turnouts coming off are PFO
Yeah,
like
it's the old-
free.
Okay.
The older stuff.
The old
that has
turnouts.
it.
and how many of those do we have? Lots?
Probably, but we need to continue replacing them. Most of the people that have turnouts now are newer turnouts that are responding a lot. There's a lot of stuff changing in the cancer world. Firefighters, it actually surpassed heart attacks as the #1 killer of firefighters. A lot of it's contaminants you bring home from fires, and now they're finding that some of the gear had it. Firefighting foam had it for years.
Foam.
and years.
No surprise there.
So,
We're fortunate to have a fire chief who's very much in tune with exactly what you're discussing,
Yeah.
especially as we look towards the nature of firefighters equipment.
He doesn't want to die of cancer.
All right. Motion to adjourn?
We did. We both.
I tried. Second, just have to vote.
Yeah.
Could you do it?
All in favor?